Is it possible to talk about race and social justice in a productive way? Welcome to part two of our conversation with Hilary. Let's jump back in. Hilary, Usi and I would love to throw some rapid fire scenarios at you of common situations that people get themselves stuck in, and how you think would be a good way of kind of navigating through that dialogue and that conversation.
Okay, I will try my best.
What about talking about these kind of issues with a more conservative family member that you don't see all the time and you don't necessarily need to have a tight relationship with, but you do still see them like an uncle, right? Like that stereotype of the uncle. How would you approach these kind of conversations when they're brought up at family holidays and gatherings or whatever?
Right. You know, I would say in that scenario, you're likely to be met with a lot of resistance and defensiveness right off the bat. And so, when someone's defensive, it's easy to kind of go on the attack, or, it very quickly can devolve into a dynamic that's polarized.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that situation, I would really try to listen really deeply without judgment, and be curious. Listen for the parts of that person's story where it sounds like, maybe there's a little bit more to be said there. I have a curiosity about what you just mentioned. Have you had an experience that made you feel that way? Will you tell me about that?
Mm.
Why is it that you feel that way? I'm curious. I want to understand you. So I think that is probably the best shot at having a conversation like that, because we don't need any more judgment or blame, or you're in this camp and I'm in this camp and the two shall never meet. That
Mm-hmm.
is not helpful. And I say that because, in earlier parts of my journey, I did do things that shamed people who were close to me. And I felt the pain of realizing that I've alienated them, and I love them and this is really important to me, but now they don't want to talk to me anymore. And so, that's why I've developed much more of this approach, I would say.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate that. It reminds me of a time I mediated a conversation between two people, around, like somebody was like a gun store owner and somebody who was like super anti-gun. And throughout the conversation, I guided them. I said, like, just be curious and learn about what's going on for the other person. And the person who was anti-gun learned that the gun store owner was really their concern. Their priority weren't even guns. Their priority was, I need to provide for my family because this is my family's business. I want to make sure I provide for my kids so they can have a good future. And that was a great point of understanding for the both of them. They both learned something about each other, like what was important, and it made the conversation so much richer than just guns are good or bad.
I love that. I mean, that reminds me of one time I heard there's a peacemaking process as part of the Diné culture, where I live on Diné land, and there's a lot of people from that community around. And I heard that peacemaking process described one time by a traditional practitioner, and it reminds me of what you just said, Chris. That
Mm,
it's much more about hearing each other's stories and building empathy for each other than it is about punishment, you
mm,
know. And there's a real chance that healing can emerge when you approach it that way.
yeah.
I wonder, what would you do in a situation when the other person, be it a friend or family member or a coworker, they have a very strong opinion? And it doesn't have to be even about our ancestors. It could be for the future generations. Let's say about the environmental issues.
Mm-hmm.
And they want to run their truck on diesel, or their car.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they are not very open to the empathy, even for somebody, especially that they are not born yet. What
Right.
would you do in that situation? How would you have that conversation?
Oh my gosh, Lucy. Oh, that's a tough one. Let's see. I think my fallback is always the personal story. you know? And so perhaps in that situation, I would tell a personal story about one of the young people in my life and say, you know, this person is really important to me. I really love them. And they have been through multiple mental health crises because of their worry about the future and not having a livable planet. That might be one approach. And to really let the heart come through. So yeah, that's the one that comes to me off the bat, but I'm curious if you have another approach to offer, because I would like to learn from you who are doing this work about how you would do that.
Great question. I can start since I asked the question. I would say the first challenge for anyone that might be listening, especially if they care very much about that issue, is we get emotionally triggered. And if we have the conversation, no matter what we say, if both people are emotionally triggered, I would say that's not a place or time to have that conversation.
Mm.
And to really see how can we stay calm. So if people are getting emotionally triggered, I would say, let's just take a break. Let's refocus on something else. Let's say if it's a family member, and shift the conversation topic.
Mm.
One of the strategies, and I would be curious about Chris's strategy. So that would be the first rule, really checking in our emotional state, their emotional state, and seeing, can we have that conversation in a calm way? If not, it's better not to have the conversation.
Mm.
If they're calm and we are calm, and if they're open to really listen and we are open to really listen to each other, then we can really have that curiosity and that empathy for each other. And I think that conversation could be very magical, where we have that understanding and we can still have maybe different opinions, but maybe we can make a way, meet halfway, or really say, okay, we will still be friends even when we have different opinions. During the political debates in the US here, I know friends that told me they stopped talking to many friends or family members.
Yeah.
And so I would say even there is a power in having the conversation and remaining friends and still wanting the best for each other, rather than vilifying the other person because they have a different opinion.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chris. Anything you want to add?
Yeah. I was gonna say, do I need the first question I always think about in anytime like I hear something like that, I always think, do I need to have this conversation right now? Because there's might be times where I'm like, I'm just trying to like get through the day, or like I'm just trying to pay for these groceries and go home, and I don't need to like have this conversation. And also, do I need to change their mind about this? Is this something that really is important to, like, that I don't really care about? So I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking about how I'm feeling. Like, am I even able to stay calm? And then it's just curious, if they feel that way. I will say about the environment. I'm curious, what is important to them? Like, it's fine if they believe that that's not important and they should be able to do whatever they want to. I wonder what is important to them. What's their priorities? What's valuable to them? What are their motivations? And then if it's a friend that's close enough, they're going to be willing to listen to my priorities. I was like, I care, a little bit about the environment. I care because of this way. I'll talk about how I care. After I learn about what their priorities are, I was like, what it's really important to me is just that my kids have a safe environment, whatever, blah, 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 blah. So I try to personalize it. Very similar. I don't always have a story. If I do have a story, I'll tell it, Hilary, but usually I'll try to personalize, like, this is my concern. This is my just biggest concern. And I do this a lot when I'm talking about LGBTQ or transgender. Like, I know plenty of people who like are, a little more conservative about transgender. And I say, listen, my biggest thing is I don't want to, there's such high rates of suicide. Like, I care a lot about suicide. So like,
Yeah.
there's just so high rates of suicide. I just don't want anybody to be dying by suicide.
Yeah.
I just want them to feel safe enough that they don't have to think of that as an option.
Right.
So I try to personalize it in that way, thinking of like, well, this is what's important to me. This is why it's important to me. So, but that's
Mm.
my approach, at least.
Mm. Well, thank you both so much. It was really helpful for me to listen to you. And I totally agree. And also, something that came to me while I was listening to both of you is, how do you know if you're gonna make a call about, are we gonna have this conversation right now, which I think is really wise? How do you know that? And the thing that came to me was, you know, by listening to your body. That's one
Mhm.
way that I have learned to approach this is I tune in, and the body is what tells you if you're triggered. You know, it's that accelerated heart rate, that feeling in the pit of your stomach, whatever it is. Everyone has different sensations that let them know that they're triggered. But I think the body holds a lot of keys to telling us how and when to go about doing this.
Mhm.
And it's helpful to listen to that.
Yeah, I think you're right, because we went to cookout with our friends, and it's a white husband, black wife. They went to go buy a car, and the salesman started telling just really crass jokes about race and autism, because he's and the husband is on the spectrum. So, and the wife, our friend, she was like, I don't care. I don't want to engage. I just want to buy this car. Just give me the numbers. I like. She was like, I don't have the energy to like have a conversation about this. Just tell me the numbers. Let's just sign this contract so we can end this interaction. So I think there is a element of listening to our bodies. Like, I don't need to have this conversation. It's not important. I just want to get through whatever I'm trying to get through here.
Yeah, yeah. And respecting those boundaries when our bodies make us aware of them.
Hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Plug for mindfulness and somatic work if anybody wants to get more in touch with their feelings and body sensations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another scenario, what about there's a family member that's more conservative that you do want a close relationship with, like a sibling, and you're like, I want to, in your mind, you're like, I want to have a close relationship with them. And I do kind of want to persuade them. It's not just I want to understand them, but I kind of want to persuade them, like to walk away from that point of view. How would you approach that? And knowing that it's not going to be a one-time conversation, but how would you approach that?
Right. I would probably invite them to an experience that is
Mm,
more visceral. So I think where we get stuck sometimes in these things is that it's all in our minds, right? And it becomes a debate. It's right and
mm,
wrong, it's polarized, it's people get stuck in their positions, and then they get entrenched and they won't budge.
yeah.
So I would probably you know, invite them, like I'm actually thinking of some scenarios like that where, you know, I'm in relationship with people who live on indigenous land that's held in reservations, and where we've been invited to organize work parties to bring people out. And so
Mm,
if there's, you know, a friend or a family member who maybe is a little bit, you know, not sure, but there's been an opening and there's a little bit of interest there, but also, you know, not full interest, but a little crack, I will invite them to come out and join me, and you know, join us in doing manual labor and whatever is requested of us, and having a visceral experience of what it's like on the res. And
mm,
you know, many of us have no idea that these reservations around the United States originated as prisoner of war camps. And so, and many of them are still dealing with extreme poverty, etc. So, you know, I think getting out of our comfort zone, getting into our bodies, having an experience, sharing food together is really valuable. Sharing food, you know, sharing stories, making friends, those things can be really impactful in helping someone understand. And you don't even have to say a word.
mm. I love it because I think that's one of the keys about changing people's minds is when they get exposure in their personal and they understand the personal as opposed to just hearing about it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah,
Because,
that can.
there's something about doing and being that opens up the heart.
Yeah.
hmm
I love that, and
Yeah.
also sounds like power of the community and creating the experiences together rather than in isolation.
hmm
And
Yeah.
getting to meet somebody else who is different reminds me of a client. He is African American heritage, and he's mentioned when he lived in an environment where there's mostly white people, he saw the expressions on their faces. He felt that he is different, and he shared, well, this is a kudos to him. He had a huge empathy and said, if they never seen anybody like me, our brain sees it as a threat because anything different can be a threat. So he was meeting people, getting friends, creating the relationships. And it sounds like it's similar technique for you in a way, really creating these experiences where people get to know and our survival brain can relax a little bit. Might be
Yeah.
another aspect of that.
Yeah, that's right. And that's incredibly generous of him.
Mm-hmm.
Incredibly generous. And that's many of the people in my life have shown me that kind of generosity too, which is just astounding to me still. But it is, if someone has the energy and the capacity in themselves to do that, it can really hold unbelievable potential for everyone involved.
Kids. How are you thinking about talking to kids about
Mm,
it? And maybe
mm,
we could break it up by age range just because
mm.
their vocabulary is different. So,
Right.
your recommendations and thoughts about talking to kids of different ages about this stuff.
Yeah. Oh, this is a question that I love because this issue is very important to me. That I mentioned the last night of 2015, finding all this new information about the family. And at that time, my son was 7, my daughter was 12. And I realized I'm I'm part of the generation that is going to begin talking about this because it was written in a book of family genealogy, but no one has discussed it. And so that absence of discussion is going to stop with me. And what that means is that I will bring in my parents, the older generation, and I will bring in my children, the younger generation,
Mm.
into this dialogue. And so I began having it with them at those ages. They had many visceral experiences, like what I mentioned, of, just being with people, being in situations that are very different from our house here in the suburbs, and, you know, sharing food with people, building relationships. And, and so a lot of the teaching with them happened that way. And then, there were also at different ages, I remember both of my kids have struggled with, oh my gosh, we're white and we're part of this system of destruction and oppression. And, some of the things that are out in the political climate today about children shouldn't feel that way. They shouldn't feel guilty. They shouldn't be forced to look at anything that makes them uncomfortable. And, my children went through phases of feeling uncomfortable. And
Mm.
I, I hope what the way that we handled it helped build a sense of resilience to say, it's normal to feel uncomfortable when you see these things. It's normal to feel shame, and you don't have to stay stuck there. You can use that awareness to do things differently. Every generation has an opportunity to take this further and to do things differently. So we have always dwelled in that dialogue around opportunity. This is an opportunity to make a different choice. This is an opportunity to create a different identity, to do things differently, to choose the person that you want to be in relation to all of this painful
Mm.
past. And so that's the way I've approached it with my own kids. And I also know that the youth who have been born, currently and over the last couple decades, they come in with so much more capacity than those of us who are older. They have an extremely high capacity to understand this stuff right off the bat. And it doesn't take a lot to help them understand it. And it doesn't take a lot to help them move through it and come to a better place. So I do think it's highly valuable to talk to children at different ages and phases and expose them to these things. And it won't hurt them as long as you hold them in love and compassion.
Love it.
I might have another challenging question.
Okay.
So let's see.
Let's do it.
Especially in our current political environment, and I know a lot of companies are cutting on their DEI initiatives. And let's say, how would you talk to a leader that says, well, I don't want to positively discriminate anyone and give them extra benefits? If they are hardworking, I am going to value them, acknowledge them, and give them, what they deserve.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I
would say, if you are enabling and creating a workspace that is predominantly white, you are missing out on so much valuable perspective and information. You are missing a huge piece of the puzzle. Your team will be less effective. Your team will be less equipped to move through difficult situations when you only have one type of identity working on problems. You are not going to be as good at solving problems. And you're missing out. You're missing out on relationships. You're missing out on expertise. You're missing out on the big picture. And so it's not a should at all, but it is do you want to operate at maximum potential or not?
I love that. Thank you.
Hilary, what would you say to someone who skipped the entire first part of your episode, skipped all the way through those hard questions, and said, I'm just going to skip to this point in the episode? What would be the 1 to 2 big takeaways that you hope that they walk away with?
Oh, that's a great question too. Well, I would share that out of all of this work that we've discussed today, there has been a path that has emerged for me, and it's accessible to anybody. And I have a Google Doc that's available online. It's called A Guide to Making a Personal Reparations Plan. Now, reparations is a word that is charged. I've seen it over and over again. When you mention reparations, a lot of times people's minds go straight into all the reasons that can't and shouldn't happen. We're habituated to argue with it, to say it's impossible, to say it'll never be enough, to say it's not needed, all of these things. But what I've discovered along my journey is that embarking on a personal reparations plan is a tremendous power move. It's a move that encourages personal liberation, personal joy, personal healing, and it's available to anyone, no matter what your circumstances, where you come from, what kind of job you have. Everyone can embark on a process of addressing and contributing to healing some of the harm that has happened here in this country. And the more we do it, and the more we talk to our friends and family about it, we will begin building a culture where this is normalized. And that is really important. It's not something that should happen in an echo chamber. It's something that we need to lean on each other and be in friendship and community with each other about, because it's valuable. It's valuable to have this be part of our dialogues. So I will share that for the show notes, and anyone is welcome to begin working on a personal reparations plan.
Absolutely. And
I
so
love
let the
it.
people know, how can they find you? How can they follow you? How can they get your works? Obviously, we'll link everything in the show notes, but how can they find you and reach out?
Yeah, my website is goodrelative.com. And I'd love to hear from people, so feel free to reach out that way. And I'm also on Facebook. My name on there is just my name. And then on Instagram is Hilary Giovale author. And I do, teach classes and facilitate workshops and different things throughout the year. And those events are always up on my website as well.
Awesome. Hilary, thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing and being willing to share your wisdom and insights with us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for encouraging that. It's really beautiful.
Thank you, Hillary.
Thanks. Much thanks to Hilary for her time today. If you want to get in contact with her, we'll put all the stuff in the show notes. If you're interested, I have a 5-day course this fall that just on how to manage the most difficult conversations, and you'll walk away with scripts and newfound confidence in how to do that. We're gonna do live groups. So let me know if you're interested. And Lucy, I think you got something coming up also.
Absolutely. Mental fitness training. A new cohort is starting in September, but I will run them every year, several times a year, where you really want to have the community support to build your mental fitness muscles and emotional resilience. So no matter what's happening, you can still have the difficult conversations with more calm and peace.
Nice. Nice. Community.
Yay.
Awesome. Thank you all. We'll see you next week on the art and science of difficult conversations.